because the big issue in the monetization in podcasts is podcasters and brands are speaking two different languages.
Okay,
Brands
this is very
talks
interesting.
about
Yeah, tell us.
reach,
Yeah.
impressions. They want to see very specific things in their report. And podcasters are more focused on the content, the quality of the audience.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then yes, there is how to say that. You're simply talking the wrong languages, and brands won't really understand, and then they move on.
Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps, and my guest on the show today is Mr. Adil Saadi. Adil, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. So guys, just a disclaimer, this is round 2. We were 5 minutes in. Luckily, we caught the recording before it was too late. And let's just double check real quick. And we're recording. We're all good. So Adil, thanks so much for your time, man, and for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. So for the people who don't know, me and Adil actually got connected through his co-founder, Lemia, and they have a company called Next Broadcast Media, which is, from what I understood, a platform that brings together podcasters and advertisers to give both the opportunity to not only from a podcaster to grow my audience and to monetize, but also for brands to be advertising on very specific targeted audiences and podcasts. So it's something very niche. I think, you guys are the number one in the market at the moment, but as we were talking off camera, things are once someone starts and is successful, everyone starts looking like, oh, okay, let's join that. If there's an opportunity there and they're doing well, then maybe we should get into that. So I'm sure now over the next, year or two, things are going to get a bit more, challenging. But what you guys do is very niche, and I think you guys solve a big problem for both for podcasters and advertisers. So for the advertiser, the challenge is, how do my marketing dollar, am I spending it and targeting the right specific audience that I want for my product? So podcasting gives you that audience. Mm-hmm. And from a podcaster's perspective, our number one challenge that you've probably heard a lot of times is podcasts struggle to monetize. That's our biggest issue. Usually brands, in my what I used to think is, a brand will reach out like, hey Khalid, we'd like to sponsor your podcast. But I've been to some events recently, some speaking events, and I learned that some podcasters, the sponsors they have, they reach out to them and be like, hey, I love your product, would you like to sponsor my show? So it was always difficult, and I think you guys have made it much simpler for us. But there's so many things I want to talk to you about today, Adil. Sorry for the long intro. And I'd love to hear your story, how you came to launch Broadcast Media, what's the vision, what are you guys trying to do? And yeah, let's take it from there.
Thank you. So I come from a digital advertising background. I worked for AdTech. I also worked for agencies on the programmatic advertising side, which is the department within agencies that buy digital space, whether it's display and video, but via third-party tool like Google DV360, and it involves bidding. So every time you log in on a website or a new page, load up, during that tenth of a second before the banner loads, a lot of information are shared with hundreds of platforms about your profile, your location.
Really? They capture all that? All that data is captured? Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that. Interesting.
And hundreds of platforms are competing in the same time to buy that impressions during that tenth of a second. And there is bidding involved. And some platform, you might have visited, let's say, an airline website.
Sure.
And you might have done it 3 times. Airline companies know it. And some of them are ready to pay way more than a brand selling Kellogg's.
Yes, true.
So, and this is programmatic advertising in a nutshell.
Okay.
So I worked on that on display and video in agencies, then in an ad tech, and then I was in charge of the programmatic direct at Jubizer.
Okay.
And but everything started actually in 2015 in Belgium, when I used to work for a company called Adform, which was what we call a demand-side platform. Is the tool agencies use to buy. To buy in programmatic. They set a budget, they set a target, they define their audience, and then they can buy across the whole internet, but they can also buy impression directly on a specific website. And we happen to be the beta tester for Spotify for Europe with an agency called Cadrion.
Okay. And how was that experience for when you guys were doing the beta testing? Was it positive? Was it negative? Was it challenging? Because from it sounds like those were the early days, because that was the spark of what you kind of guys do, what you do now, right?
Yes, it's so what happened is I worked on that back in 2015.
Okay.
And until 2019, I didn't see any progress for the programmatic side here in the region when I came
interesting.
here. The reason we did those tests back in Belgium is we actually department within agencies compete with budget, and if you can help them get access to inventory, they can buy in programmatic rather than direct.
Okay.
That's the way we call it.
Mm-hmm.
You just do them a huge favor. So, and this is what we're doing with that agency back in the days. So they were able to start moving budgets to their departments. And so was very successful, went pretty well. And then, yes, things happened, ended up working here in Dubai and didn't see any progress. The audio industry was dominated by two music platforms. And I believe audio is not limited to two music platforms. We consume podcasts, we consume web radio. I can ask you if you own an FM device at home?
No.
Nobody does. The last place we listen to radio, it's in our car. But we still assume that we listen to radio in our kitchen in the morning. Yeah. But it's no longer the case.
That's true.
And even in your car, you are using the Bluetooth. You are connected, your phone is connected with Spotify, with Anrami, with maybe your favorite podcast, Apple Podcast, but all that is super fragmented. You have thousands, 100,000s of podcasters like you all trying to monetize your inventory on your own. And the idea was to facilitate all that, is to bring everyone on one platform and give to agencies access to 100,000s of podcasters in one place, and but also give you access, you as a podcasters, to hundreds of brands interested to spend with you. So that's the idea behind Next Broadcast.
I think, man, it's so interesting that, so you've been in the industry for a while, specifically in programmatic advertising, and it's interesting that for 4 years you were saying that there wasn't much of a change, but then all of a sudden it sounds like from 2019 onwards there was that missing piece, which is, you know, bringing them together and making it, like you said, facilitating it, making it easier for them. Because I know, so you guys have 70% of, you know, the top 100 shows in the world. You have
the region.
Oh, and sorry. So thank you for the clarification. In the region, and that's massive. That's amazing. And how long has the company been running now?
Since November 2019. But
oh wow, 5 years. Okay.
We went all in during the lockdown.
During the lockdown.
Yes, during the lockdown.
That's the time to go all in. And actually, look, it paid off so much now.
Actually, many people started to listen to podcasts during the lockdown.
I started my podcast during the lockdown.
So before the lockdown, we're talking about podcasts with people who had never heard about the podcast. They were consuming podcasts without knowing they were listening to podcasts on YouTube, but it wasn't a big thing yet.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the lockdown, we had brands started to reaching out to. They were just wondering, where are all those people who used to commute every day? We used to reach them in their car. Where are they now? And they knew they were on podcasts. So, and this is how things started for us.
Okay, that's so interesting. That like how their perspective and how they saw is like, okay, we can't get people here and here. Where can we kind of reach them? So I'm curious, what was your thought process in the sense of building out the network in terms of like bringing podcasters onto the network? What was that process? What was your strategy in going about that? Like, were you very selective, or at the beginning you just needed, to have some type of people, some podcasters, some audience to start, moving that engine forward?
First, we had to understand it's an ecosystem. It's a very fragmented ecosystem.
Okay.
This is not like, for instance, YouTubers. It's easy. It's one platform called YouTube. You upload your content there, and you can get access to everything there.
Yeah.
It's very unified. Podcast. I don't know if you're using Omni. I don't know what CMS this podcast is using, hosting platform.
I'm using SoundCloud.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, SoundCloud is one thing. So if we sit down with the podcaster and say use SoundCloud, we have to see with you how we can monetize your inventory. So we have to move you on another platform to be able to play ads. And you have hundreds of solutions. So for us, the beginning was to understand the whole ecosystem, understand what are the right platform, on what platform you should move, and figure out we're at the top platform that have most of the podcasters. So that was a long journey to learn and understand what works, what doesn't work. A lot of failure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes, we tried many things, but I think we're very lucky. We met the right people. They were super supportive because we're helping them, to bring more podcasters on their platform, and we also picked a solution which are best suited for monetization, for programmatic.
So, do you have any from you guys? Is there any conditions or rules for, like, let's say I'm a podcaster, I join your network? Are there any things that I have to meet, have to do? Do I have any limitations, or it's just I come, I join, and that's it?
So
I'm just trying to get a clear picture of like how it works.
We're actually on the side of the podcasters. We think you should be completely independent. You shouldn't have any exclusivity. You should be able to work with as many people as possible. And the one that has budget should be the one that gets the campaign and not lock. We don't believe in locking podcasters, but you also need to use the right tools. You need to use tools that are compatible with the monetization platform we're using, but also the tool your clients are using, the agencies. Because the big issue in the monetization in podcasts is podcasters and brands are speaking two different languages.
Okay,
Brands
this is very interesting. Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. Impressions. They want to see very specific things in their report. And podcasters are more focused on the content, the quality of the audience.
Absolutely, yeah.
So and then yes, there is how to say that. You're simply talking the wrong languages, and brands won't really understand, and then they move on. But by coming on a platform where they can run their campaign, they can see all the impression, the reporting. You technically don't need to report anything to them. So we just try to simplify all that. We are like an interpret in between brands and.
I love that analogy that you use, that podcasts and brands are speaking two different languages, because you're so right, in the sense that our even our metrics and our focuses and our targets are completely different. So bringing us to a place where you're making both our lives easier is like a win-win. It's a win-win for everyone. And I know you guys have something called the audio ad reach calculator, which I thought was a very interesting tool, because when it comes to marketing, I'm like, it's all about, from what I understood, it's like, what is gonna give me the biggest return? Me investing $1 into, let's say, a podcast or into a campaign or into this. That's what it's all about. So that calculator just gives me at least a brief, idea of what I could expect. Have you had but from your side, is it difficult you guys aren't guaranteeing that, but you're saying this is what you'll probably get. So from me joining, let's say I spent $1,000 on the campaign, and it said I can get, I think, a couple thousand impressions, couple thousand something listens. Is that not necessarily guaranteed, but like, if I don't hit that, is that a negative on me, or is there more stuff that I need to do, or how? Tell us a little bit about that aspect.
So there is two ways to buy podcasts. You can buy sponsorship. You get the host that talks about your brand. Mm-hmm. And I strongly believe in niche content, very niche audiences. You don't need to have millions of listeners. It depends what you're doing and what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then you have the model, which is more for FMCG, the brands who want reach. Because most of the brands, I'll tell you how it works. When a big brand comes to you, very often they ask you, what is the reach? What is your reach? That's the way they calculate. Yeah. And then they have their own formula on their end to know what reach they should get on that specific audiences. And then they get back to you with a budget. Okay. And that's a CPM model. So you buy impressions. Yes. When you work with the podcasters directly and you do sponsorship, it's a bit different. You get the host that technically talk on behalf of your brands and recommend your brand. It's way more powerful. But then it also depends the industry. Like, for instance, if I'm selling private jet, I don't need millions of impressions. I can go on a show with literally 50 listens per month, and I can close one deal. And so that would be unfair for that podcasters that has a show about private jet to sell his show in a CPM model. He'll generate maybe $10. When you could work directly with the brands do a full branded episode. You could literally produce a whole episode, invite someone and produce a nice piece of content, reach maybe 50 people, and out of 50, maybe 5 might be interested, and 1 converts. So we started with a few podcasters, and I found it very smart. What they do is they don't target media budget, they target event budget. Because if you think about it, like for instance, last year we organized the first podcast advertising event here in Dubai.
Oh, okay.
And we put the podcasters on stage, and the brands came to listen to the podcasters and feed them with data, and was very successful. For us, organizing that event costs a lot of money.
Of course, yeah.
But if I could be on a podcast that has 300 listeners from the media industry, I'm talking about media buyer, it's way more profitable for us.
Of course, yeah.
First of all, the people listen to the podcast because they want to listen to the podcast. They're really interested in that. They're 100% focused on that. And I can get way more reach. So you could target even budget. So imagine you're a company, you have to fly people. You have to pay for the accommodation, the entertainment, to get them for maybe 2 days, to get their attention for maybe a couple of hours. Sadly, a big part of people traveling, this is free holidays.
That's true. Yeah, of course.
But if someone goes on their own to listen to a podcast, they're really into it. I would rather spend on a podcast and get 300, 1,000 people than to invest thousands or hundred thousands of dollars to fly people and get their attention.
Yeah.
So, and this is how you can get shows with less listen that generate way more revenue than bigger show. Like for instance, if you have a sports show, the value of the audience is lower than a business show, or something very niche, cybersecurity, for instance.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the way you could price. Your show is based on the audience and the genre. And our calculator take into that in consideration. Okay,
so the audience, and the genre, and then we kind of work backwards to figure out what platforms or what podcasts we should be going on. Because I think you made a really good point. If the goal of events like this and campaigns like this is reach, then I love the example you use, like hosting an event that's going to cost you hundreds of thousands and people and stuff, compared to something much more significant that is targeted to a very specific audience, and that's guaranteed that they're going to listen to it because they have frequent things, is much better. And so let's say I'm Khaled, I joined the network. Now brands, if I've understood correctly, 2 things can happen. Either a brand can automatically advertise on my podcast because I join your RSS feed, so that it will automatically run. I don't have to do anything with the edits or whatever; it will run by itself. That's one thing. Or if they want something more in depth, then we can build out more of like a campaign or whatever. But my question is, like, from a business model perspective, where does your revenue generate from? Is it from the ad spend that they're planning to do? Like, how does that work? Because it's free as a podcaster to join, right? And I think, is it free for brands to join as well?
Yes, there is no cost.
So it's free. So what's the revenue model that you guys use to, build a business?
So right now, most of the revenue comes from a CPM model. But we're investing a lot to help podcasters monetize more, generate more revenue with the sponsorship. We think there is more potential with that. But what we need is just to simplify the access to podcasters. Because we do it. We receive briefings from brands and they need something very specific which is not on our network. It takes us weeks, if not months, to get in touch with the podcasters, to schedule a call, negotiate with them, see if we have to move them on one platform, another one, and we have to do it one by one. So what we're trying to do is to have everyone on one tool where you can simply, you as a brand, search what you need, get the list of podcasts, and be able to interact directly with them. And what we think is podcasters should be more independent, and we should just simplify the access to brands, but also to podcasters for brands.
Yeah.
So
what I love about your platform, Adel, is you're giving podcasts that maybe don't have as big as audience as others opportunities to monetize, and not only that, to maybe partner with the brands that are very niche, to them. And like you said, simplifying the process is the biggest challenge. And you clearly have, I appreciate the time you've taken to look at the ecosystem, because even all the stuff you're telling me now, like, I'm learning right now. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that's how you have to view it. I didn't know like where the pain points were. But when it comes, but as you know, You know what's weird? It's like two things are kind of happening at the same time in the world. There's the whole TikTokification of, you know, of media, which is, you know, the reels, the shorts, the unbelievably animated, you know, videos, a lot of design, a lot of production. That's one side, and you know, we're scrolling. But at the same time, long form content is also on the rise. So you have short form here and you have long form here. I know the long will play into the short, but both are happening at the same time, and it's all audio based. And I was doing my research on one of your blogs, and you guys were talking about the difference between running a campaign, let's say on a social media campaign or an audio ad campaign. And the way you guys described it was very interesting. So there's, you know, discovery versus selection, and there's distraction versus emergent. And you're talking about basically how on social media, yes, you might get more eyes on it, but it's not necessarily the right eyes that you might be, you know, looking for. So going from audio would probably be a better bet if you're going to, like, you know, spend money. Obviously, a combination of the two is the best strategy. But my question to you is, let's say I have $50,000. I have a choice between running a social media ad campaign or an audio ad campaign. Which one would I pick and why? Or what would you pick and why?
It depends. Your target audience, it depends. I will tell you that you have to be on both. You cannot be just on one platform. But it really depends the advertiser and the strategy behind the campaign. But you also have to take into consideration what is an impression for social media and what is an impression on audio. An impression on social media, according to the IRB, which is the Advertising Bureau, they set the standard for display video, but also for audio. According to the IRB, an display impression, it's more than 1 second, more than 50% of your banner visible. So if you take a banner, you have maybe maximum 10 words, and this is 1 second gone. For audio, it's literally 30 seconds in your AirPods, the best sound quality we have ever had, and it's up to 70 words. Also, the share of voice, you have to take that into consideration. On social media, maybe within 1 hour, you might be exposed to hundreds of ads. You might not remember maybe 99% of them.
Yeah, true.
Audio, your share of voice is way higher. On a podcast, on a 45-minute podcast, you might listen to 2 ads. And you remember, I listened to Joe Rogan, and it's like a 3 hours episode. Even though AG1 is not available here, I know about AG1.
Thank you, but
I know about BetterHelp.
I know, same. It's like, so funny.
I don't have any mental issues, but I hear it so often that I start wondering maybe I should use them. So, and you do remember. So
that's actually, you know what? That's a very good point. Like, so one of my favorite podcasts that I watch is Diary of a CEO. And I watch it on YouTube, and obviously now I know about, you know, like the Zoe, and from a podcast I watched, there was a guy called Gary Brecka. He's a human biologist. I ordered after listening to him, I ordered his genetic test. I did the test. Yes. I did everything. I got all my supplements now. So
I listened to that episode twice. He was on Joe Rogan as well.
Yes,
I listened to the episode twice.
That guy, a little bit of a sidetrack for us, but this is fun. He honestly changed my life. Like, my perspective on health, my perspective on all of this, like learning that dopamine, for example, that comes from the gut. I'm like, what the fuck? I thought, you know, the whole time I thought it was in my head, because that's what they talk about, you know. And then I did the genetic test. Highly, by the way, if you haven't done it, I highly recommend you do it. It opened my eyes to so much. It was like people with, so you have, they test 5 genes, okay? And they're testing basically how's your body working. Like, in the system, there's a process from like point A to point B. And in there's like, you know, steps. So for example, in my case, step 2 and 3 were broken. There's like they call it a genetic break, or like a mutation. So that gene isn't working at 100%. Therefore, this process isn't working how it should be working. And his perspective is, once you know where you're deficient, all you have to do is supplement for it, and it will get fixed. So I did the test. I got all the supplements now. I've been taking them now for recent, like a couple of 5-6 days maybe. And I had a call with their geneticist and so on. And it's just been and it all came from a podcast. This is what I'm talking about. People don't understand. my life changed because of podcasting. I do this because I watched a podcast and it changed my life. I watched this podcast about health and now I've taken like a massive step towards, improving my health. The power, I think people, I really think, I don't know if you would agree with me, people underestimate the power of podcasting. Would you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
It's because we don't see them.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think we still underestimate that?
But even the podcasters themselves, they are very surprised when they meet. Like we were invited by, I think it's the Ministry of Technology in Saudi that organized an event called Ignite the Sound last year, a year and a half ago in Riyadh.
Okay.
18,000 people registered, and I think more than 10,000 people came, enthusiasts. And we work very closely with many top networks like Mike's, and it was the first time actually they were with the listeners. And what they found out is actually they're fans. Like for instance, you had a couple of booths where they were you could sit down with your favorite podcast host. You had the line for 4 days. People were queuing non-stop just to get a moment with the podcasters. Same this weekend in Sharjah, you had the entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I was there.
Event. I was
there. Yeah. Oh, you were there too?
Yes. Stephen Bartlett. I did the 2 days.
No, I just did one day.
I did Sunday?
I did Saturday.
Oh, okay. So you missed Stephen Bartlett on...
I did, but I just saw him. I was at the 1 Billion Summit a couple weeks ago.
He's back.
And I saw him and then he's back and he's coming to Coca-Cola Arena, so there's lots of chances to see him.
Actually, what I found the most interesting is actually the podcast host and CEO of Tamania, Abdurrahman.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've heard a lot about him and their podcast. Apparently, they're killing it. It's Arabic, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That podcast has more views on YouTube than the best episodes of Joe Rogan with Elon Musk.
Wow.
So if you
Shout out to Tamania, bro. Congratulations.
Yes.
I've never met you, but congratulations.
Tamania, Mike's also, they do amazing things. We have Pepper Sandwich. We have Saudi produce amazing content. You have amazing content producers in Saudi.
It's the biggest podcasting market in the region, I think, right? In terms of listeners.
It's actually the second market worldwide in terms of
worldwide?
Podcast consumption. Yes.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Because you have to compare it to the size of the population. It's easy to have millions of listens in the US with a population of 300 million people. But if you take Saudi with, I think, 38 million people, you have numbers higher than in the US. The podcasters we manage, many of them have millions of downloads per month on a population of 38 million people. So, Saudi produce great content, but they also have an audience that loves great content. And the discussions we had last year in Ignite with the people who were interested to launch their podcast, it's all around mental health, self-improvement, poetry, philosophy. It's extremely premium content.
Of course, so, and it was interesting looking at, because I looked at your Wrapped for 2023, the one you guys made, and what was interesting was the areas that were doing the best. So there's travel, business, healthcare, finance, automotive are like leading the charge in terms of it sounds like the industries that are interested in it, but the topics or the messages of the podcasts are focused around education, society, business, culture, language, and exactly like what you were talking about, premium content. So let me put it to you this way. So with the work I do, a lot of people want to launch podcasts now, right? I work with companies and brands, and a lot of times they'll be like, "Hey Khaled, we want a podcast." And I'm like, "Great, why?" And they just like, and there's no answer to it. And I think there's still, from what I've seen, there's still an like podcast is in the mainstream here, but there's still like, if from a person to a client or something, I think there's still an education that I have to do on my behalf to explain why, how, what's the potential, all that kind of stuff. Have you found that to be the same? Do you still find that? Because I'm sure in your process as well, from when you started, now it's a lot more mainstream. Was it difficult selling or educating people on the power of podcasting and why people should get into it through like your journey over the last couple of years?
In the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
Now it's way easier because the media industry is a very interesting industry. You deal with very smart people, quite educated, and pretty much all of them listen to podcasts today. Some of them, it's more educational content around business, self-improvement, and other, it's more for personal things. So now we'll say this year, pretty much everyone we talk to are heavily into podcasts. When we start talking about business and we switch to what they like to listen, the discussion changed completely. Because it's very personal. It's what I listen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like if you take your favorite podcasters, you really feel like if you know them.
True.
You spend hours. Very true. Yeah, you spend hours with them every week. So the discussions is easier now, but there is still a lot of work to do in terms of education, in terms of numbers. We need, because you said it's not really mainstream. It is mainstream. It is the new radio. We call our company Next Broadcast Media, because of we saw it back in when I was in an agency called Dentsu, Amnet in Belgium. We saw brands in 2014 trying to move their budget away from TV to YouTube, to video.
Okay.
So and this is the purpose actually of Next Broadcast Media, is to help brands, move those budget from offline to online, because it happened. It is mainstream. It's the main. As I ask you, you said you don't own a radio at home. How would you listen to radio at home? You'll have to use your phone. It's digital.
Exactly.
So, this is how we can help brands, but we need to feed them with a lot of numbers. So we need to work on surveys. We need to work on white papers. So and
exactly. Sorry to interrupt you, but on that point, because in my experience, even when I've been trying to compile like a summary of analytics for like the region and podcasts and stuff, it's very difficult to find that information. Like people ask me sometimes, how many listens does that podcast get? If it's okay, sometimes it's public, but a lot of times it's very difficult to find this information. And I think that is also an area that needs to be addressed. There needs to be like a home or like a podcast directory, if you'd like to call it, that has the podcasters, the analytics, the everything. And that's kind of what I feel like you guys are doing.
Yes, we are. I mean, it's not official yet, but this is what we are.
That's where you're moving to.
Yes. So
I love it because it's needed, man. We really need that.
Because many podcasters miss opportunities with brands because they don't have access to your number and they don't want to gamble on your show.
Yeah.
But if they get access to the number and it's provided by a third party, which guarantees full transparency with the numbers, they will feel more comfortable investing. Because most of the time, the person booking the company is an employee. This is not their money. So they are accountable if they make the wrong decision. If you provide them all the tools where they can show that the data is there, that the show is generating there, it will be easier for you to get budget from them.
Yeah. So providing providing more analytics and data from the podcasting for the brands to make it easier for them to facilitate that process, basically.
So you have data, it's one thing. So they need to be able to know the reach before, because it happens very often. You have, for instance, BetterHelp in the US. I think they spend $70 million per year.
They're on every podcast I hear.
It's the biggest spender in podcast. And I saw them on stage, I think last year in Dallas. And they were explaining that they did invest in many podcasts, and as the data wasn't right, they saw it later that they didn't have the numbers they were supposed to have. But if you can see the numbers before to invest, you can invest in those shows. But then after, you need to get access to numbers, like live numbers, to know exactly how many listeners you get, because you'll be able to adapt your campaign to optimize during the. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is brand safety. It's
brand safety.
Brand safety.
Okay.
So you have many brands who feel comfortable investing in podcasts because, especially here in the region, because they think that there is a lot of obscenities. They think it's someone recording in his garage and just like putting a lot of obscenities in a. First of all, in this region is not the case. It's not a common thing to use obscenities when you produce content. But you need third-party partner to guarantee to brands. It does exist for video. You have great solutions like Double Verify, like Integral Ad Science, Moat, Channel Factory for YouTube, and it helps brands invest massively on YouTube because they get that guarantee that there is no content that could harm their brand. That's the brand safety. But then you also have the brand suitability. You could have a show which is perfectly fine, But for certain brands, it's the wrong place to be. Like for instance, if you take brands like Kinder, Ferrero, if you take Nestle, they're not in Europe. In the US, they're not allowed to advertise to kids. So
oh really?
Yes, they are not allowed to advertise to
I
kids.
didn't know that. Okay, very interesting.
So for them, not using a third-party partner that can guarantee them that the ads won't run on kids content, it's an issue. As soon as you can guarantee them that your budget won't be delivered on kids content, then they will go all in with you. But we didn't have that for you.
Okay.
So we had to figure out with partner. We brought a great partner on board,
So sorry to interrupt you. So this partner that you guys brought on board. So let's say I'm a brand. I want to advertise on Adil's podcast. I'm gonna speak to these guys, and they're gonna tell me, is Adil's podcast brand safe for me?
Yes.
Right. And their job as the partner is to go through the content of the podcasters, whatever, and come up with, let's say, a presentation or like a brief of this is the podcast, this is what it talks about. These are like like almost like a SWOT analysis on like a podcast. Is that basically what they do?
Yes.
Okay.
So you have a great solution for video called Channel Factory. They do a pretty amazing job for brands very active on YouTube. So what they do first is to analyze your previous campaign. So technically you can get a report from YouTube with every single URL of videos where your ads ran. Then they analyze that and they tell you what was the worst.
Okay.
Where your ads was running. And like for instance, you could have a campaign running for I don't know, an insurance company, and they would show you that actually 40% of your impression were running on kids content. They are not relevant. Why it's running on kids content? The targeting, the person that set up the campaign was perfectly fine. It was right. But kids don't have their own Google accounts. Usually, if you go out in restaurants, you will see kids on iPads, but they are using the accounts of their parents.
Yeah.
So the ad is running on the right person. That person might have been consuming business content, but at that moment, it's a kid watching cartoon. So they can help you optimize your spends and also avoid the wrong content. And they'll give you actually a list of URL where your ads should run.
That's amazing.
So we're trying to do the same with podcasts.
Got you.
But first, you need to be able to get access to the content to analyze it. Thanks to AI, you can literally analyze 100,000 of hours with AI. That is literally going through every single episode and analyze all the content, scripted, translated, because we do it in Arabic. It has never been done before.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Great idea.
And it's not about keywords. It's about the context, the context where you use the keyword. Like for instance, the F word could be positive or negative. If you take Joe Rogan, for me, it's very premium content. They use a lot the F word, but it doesn't mean that the content is negative for me. But you also have to see in what context the word is being used, and that's what they do. It's not about blacklisting a series of episodes because the word XYZ was used. Is in what context it was used. And this is what we are launching like right now.
Okay, that is awesome, and I think it's so smart to translate it to Arabic because, like we were talking earlier, it's the biggest market, and in Saudi especially, and in the Gulf, you probably have the best chance of reach if you do advertise in Arabic or go down that route because there's a massive market for it. But what I thought was very interesting so they'll analyze the episode, they'll look at the context of the episode and what was used and how and when, and come up with an answer at the end. My question, one of the things I wanted to understand is, okay, so now let's say you're running a 30-second ad on my podcast. Okay. How do I know what the impact of that was? Do you get what I'm saying? Because that link is one that maybe I don't know if it exists or it's possible. So that's why I'm genuinely asking, because I don't know. It does. Okay. Okay. Tell us all.
We actually thought about that from the beginning. We needed a third-party partner. We like working with third-party partner completely independent from us, whatever it was, brand safety, brand suitability, or for BLS, brand lift studies.
Okay.
Yes, and so audio and display and video are two complete different things. Display, it's easy. You can use clicks, you can track if the person landed on your website, and you can see if the person converted, or you can retarget those people, and so you can see if a campaign was successful based on conversion, traffic, and clicks. But audio doesn't have clicks.
Exactly.
But you do have actually a lot of accidental clicks with display ads. So you could have a campaign that works pretty well, but actually it's a lot of accidental click because your ad is running on maybe games and people click. But for audio, we don't have clicks. We can't be judged. Podcasters can't be judged on clicks. However, if I tell you about a nice new restaurant that opened in this area, you will Google it. That's your first reflex.
Of course.
So we need to be able to also track that. We also need to see how you feel about the ad, how you feel about the brands. Is your perception about the brand changing after listening to the ads on your favorite podcasts, after listening to your favorite podcaster talk about the brand? So you have third-party solution that helps you with that. Okay. And we use third-party partner that run brand lift studies for our clients after the campaign finishes. Technically, while the campaign is running, after a couple of days, we launch those campaigns, and they have different methodology, and I won't get in the details.
Sure.
But they are able to retarget people who got exposed to the audio ad. Okay. And ask them a series of questions, up to 7 questions. So we get information about their age, their gender, to know who they are. And then after we ask them how they feel about the ad, we play them the ad as well. And they also use a control group, people who have never been exposed to the audio ad, 50-50. And we see how that group also feels. And we also play them the ad. It's like you have to answer to 7 questions. We play you the ad and to go to the next one. And people don't get paid for that. And if you give up at question 6 and you don't finish 7, you are no longer in the... And they guarantee us a certain number of respondents. Okay. And pretty much we see an increase between 25 to 28% of the brand likability increase, the buying intent increase, but which is interesting, they tell you also why it didn't work. Is it because of the creative? Is it because of the targeting? Okay. Which gives you the possibility to improve your next campaign.
That is so interesting, and I never knew that companies like this existed and like they do that work, because I always wondered, I'm like, if you're running an ad on a podcast, what is the after effect? Okay, I got money as a podcaster, but I don't know what the impact that was for the brand. The only metric that I would have as a podcaster to give you is, here's my listens. And this is maybe how many people on certain platforms will tell you like for how long and whatever. But this is the key, like the final piece that's so important, especially for brands, because I need all that information to know what's going on. Am I doing the right thing? Are we investing the money in the right way? And I appreciate how, from your perspective, I like how you bring on third parties are independent, so it's unbiased. The work they do is unbiased. It's not, to promote, a certain idea, a certain brand. So it's very objective, and you're getting the real results. So I think that's a fantastic idea, to continuously partner with companies that fill those gaps, fill the gaps for you. One of the things I wanted to ask is, so now podcasting is in the mainstream, as we've been discussing, but I still see challenges and roadblocks along the way. And we were just talking earlier how competition is now increasing. So I can tell you just an example from myself. So I've been doing, as I told you, I've been doing this for about a year, my consulting, and I was running Google ads, and that's how I was getting some clients. But I was running campaigns the last 3 months, and you notice that, first of all, the budget that I was using before is not going to work anymore. Mm-hmm. A lot more people are into it. A lot more people are interested in podcasting, not necessarily what I do, but like bidding on for example, podcast studios. I can't tell you how many times I've been reached out to, like, do you have a studio? I want a studio. So I also help people set up studios if they want. I have a partner that I bring in, and we build out the whole studio if that's what they need. But it's in a very short time, the competition has increased significantly, and we're talking a year. So what do you see now as the biggest, or what are the biggest challenges you're facing now, or do you think are going to be roadblocks in the future for us to move forward?
So we see actually competition as a good thing. We work very closely with I will say, competitor. Okay. What we're trying to do with them is to increase the size of the pie. Instead of competing with the same budget, we should work together to convince brands to move budget away from YouTube, social media, from radio, and increase their spend on local podcasters. I believe podcasters became the most influential people in 2024 compared to, like, think about one of the influencer you might follow on social media. Try to think about their voice. You might never heard about their voice. You just see the content, you spend maybe a second with it before to swipe. And a podcaster, you're going to spend 45 minutes, maybe a few hours per week. So it's completely different. And we need to explain that to brands and people willing to reach, very specific audiences, that this audience is extremely premium and it can have a big impact on your revenue. And so for us, instead of competing with with our competitor trying to fight with the existing budget, is to work together, educate the industry, and bring more brands to. So what we did on our end, we launched a self-service platform to enable actually small businesses to get access to audio, because it wasn't available for them previously. Because if you go to the big music platform, they have minimum spend.
Yeah.
You're a small business, you don't want to run an ad across the whole country. You want to run it just in your city. Like if you have a coffee business, for instance, you just want to promote your coffee business in your city. The other challenge we faced in the past is the creative. Many brands don't have their own creative. And if you have never done it, I mean, you're from the industry, you know how it works, you know where to find the copywriter, you know where to find the voiceover, you know how to record. But for most of the businesses, this is not something they know.
Yeah.
So they will have to spend a lot of money to find a copywriter to record an audio ad. So what we did with the self-service platform is to enable small businesses to get access to the same inventory big brands get access to. And we also provide them the tool to generate a script with AI. It's available. You just need to answer to a few questions and you get your script. You can even do it yourself directly on ChatGPT. You even don't need to do it with us. We don't charge for it. It's free.
Yeah.
And then you can turn that script into a radio ad for free. You don't need to pay for, and you will make the difference with the, I don't know if you might have heard AI voices.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's crazy.
And
it's crazy.
It gets better every month. The voice literally breathes between words. It feels like human. We have brands that ask different samples, and we also send AI voices. And we have brands that select the AI voice because it sounds better for their brands. You can't make the difference.
Yeah.
So by providing all those tools to small businesses, we kind of bring new clients to that industry who can finally spend on podcasts because they can do it themselves.
Yeah.
You as a podcaster, you will work with a small business that has just maybe $500. You might need to have 2-3 calls, and it's already not profitable anymore. But if they set up their campaign directly on your show, without having to talk to you, it becomes profitable.
You mentioned something there about how brands are. First of all, you made a good point about the difference between an impression on like social media and like listeners. So, because I tell people, I'm like, because people will be like, oh, I want my podcast, I want to have 100,000 listens, I want this and that, and I'm like, guys, listen, let me tell you, this is what I've learned in my experience so far. Number one, you have to be consistent. Consistency is incredibly important. And even mine's a weekly show, and even there's times I haven't been consistent. So that's going to hurt you, number one. Number two, guests. But you know what guests have taught me? I've learned that there's no such thing as a dream guest. In the sense that there's no guest that I'm going to bring on a show that is going to change my show for me. That's what at least, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the future there will be. But so far, even the people who have massive reach and so on, doesn't mean anything, even if they reshare your episode. Okay, what I see the numbers. Yeah, you might get an uptick on like that episode because they shared it, but that doesn't mean they're now a follower of your podcast. That doesn't mean they're a listener. If I want to follow you on Instagram, I just go like this. If I want to follow your podcast, I have to have a reason. And I love what you said about the time is so important. Like if you're targeting a podcast audience that listen to, like let's say my podcast audience, you're targeting them and they listen to me every week, the retention time you have there compared to like an ad there is mind blowing. Like I will accept, and I do accept. And even in the episodes I watch, I'm like, okay, there's an ad. He's gonna talk about an ad now. It's like a minute, whatever. But then I'm gonna get back into the content that I've decided to go consume. You know, I've made this choice. I want to do this. So my buy-in is already there. And I'm already bought into the host. So if you're advertising a product, even I was looking at your numbers and it was saying like 60% like of people found out about new products, through podcasts, just like I did, just in the example I was telling earlier. I'm sure you have as well. And this is something that I learned about recently and has become like, learning sonic branding. So I had Ahmed Hafar on the show, the voice of Dubai guy. And we were talking about the importance of sonic branding and how that's changed and, why audio is so important. And what I've understood is it's almost like audio now has reached a point that if it's not in your marketing strategy or it's not part of that mix, you're doing a disservice to yourself, in my opinion. What do you think about the whole sonic branding, voice over, audio element into this entire like marketing strategy that we talk about?
We have partners specialized in audio brand identity. They are called Sixième Son. With the sonic branding, you can play with emotions. You can go beyond just sharing a message, but you can literally play with people's emotion, and those companies are able to create you the right music, the right sound, and literally play with the emotions of the listeners. You could do that with audio. We're not expert in sonic branding, so I won't be talking a lot about it.
Sure.
But we advise to brands to, if you are planning to go big on audio, you should definitely work with experts. And we have a partner for that. And they've done an amazing work with, for instance, it's not limited to your ads. Like, for instance, they did something with Etihad.
Okay.
They literally built their whole audio identity. From the moment you come on their website, in the airport, in the airplane, the music you hear on board is not the same when you on board during the flight, and so they take you like on a journey with your emotion, with sounds.
Okay.
The lounge, the airport. So you could have that super premium package. I would say you could buy for sonic branding, or you could find the right sonic logo that. You won't need to mention your brand. If I do Parapapa, know exactly what we're talking about. And
that's true.
Yes, you don't need to do that.
It sounds like them. That's what you want, like the consumer to say. Yeah. And so it's interesting. Like sonic branding is something very new to me. Like I only found out that this thing even exists very recently. But what I've noticed and what I've seen is even through like LinkedIn and stuff, it's starting to pop up a lot more here. I'm starting to see more people doing it, entering that space. And it's kind of like audio and video are the new like avenues that everyone's fighting in. You know what I mean? Because, for example, like my podcast is a video podcast. Now, a podcast in its essence is audio. You know that. We listen to it in the car. I listen to it when I'm doing this, whatever. That's what a podcast is, depending on your vibe. Yeah. But I think nowadays, if you're gonna do a podcast, I would always recommend do video. Why? Yes. Because it's a lost opportunity to gain incredible content. Like, for example, even from this episode, we're gonna create some fantastic reels that are gonna be great for social media, for thought leadership, of course. So it's almost a disservice to not do it. If I'm bringing an amazing guest, and I've had this experience before. Bring an amazing guest on, you have a conversation, great, but like, I want to see what he looks like when he was saying that thing. It just adds a totally different connection and emotion to that thing. What's your perspective on that? Do you agree, disagree?
I 100% agree, and you should also add social media. 2 days ago, discovered a new show on social media. So I think the algorithm of social media are pretty good. They understand what you like. If I start swiping in front of you, you will see 90% of the content are podcasts. The platform got that. That's what I like. Yeah. That's what I watch. So automatically, and it's right. I found like for instance, I discovered an episode of I love Huberman Lab.
Okay, he's awesome. Me and you clearly listen to the same podcast, same mindset, everything. So respect.
Yeah, I was saying that. So I discovered the show on social media. I started watching the show on YouTube. And then when I was in my car, I continued on Spotify. So
that's exactly what I do.
And actually, the social media platform are also investing heavily in podcasts. If we take, for instance, TikTok, there is a person here in the region in charge just of podcasts. She's super helpful. Her name is Lynn. In case she sees
shout out, Lynn.
She does a pretty good job trying to help podcasters find their audience on TikTok. And I attended actually one of the events. TikTok organized an event a few months ago, and we had Tamania on stage, which is one of the biggest network, and they talked about their strategy. And I discussed it with them after the panel discussion. They told me, we release episode. The episode is okay. But we also release content on social media, shorts. and they're also very consistent. You also have to be super consistent on social media.
Yeah, you do.
You have to use the right hashtags as well. So working with the team, they'll tell you exactly what hashtag you should use. If you use the in-house, I would call it that way, hashtags, if you do it right, you're consistent, one video will pick up.
Yeah.
And Tamania confirmed, see, we release episode for 1 month, they do okay, and then that video goes viral. And then the episode goes viral.
At a later stage, yeah. Not necessarily at the beginning, yeah.
So, and then yes, your video goes viral on YouTube, and then the same podcast goes also viral on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
Yeah. It's so you describing like the journey of how like you find a podcast and then you went to YouTube and then listen to it like on Spotify, like in the car. That's like exactly like what I do, how I found shows, and talking about how we've touched on Joe Rogan. You mentioned him, and it's so funny. A couple of years ago, when I first started my podcast, he had just it was right when I started. I think he had just signed his first $100 million deal with Spotify, that exclusive right. And now it's so funny that I'm speaking to you and like you actually posted it. It was from your post on LinkedIn that I found out about that he signed the new, because I heard on his last podcast or recently that deal was coming to an end. So, you know, what's going to happen now? So now they've given him $215 million for his podcast. But also what was interesting this time is it's not exclusive. So he can so his podcast can be on YouTube, can be everywhere. And I think they've agreed it's 250 million, then like an ad revenue, like share spent. When Spotify makes a move like that, when a company invests that much into some $250 million into like one person, into like a podcast.
It works.
Yeah, because they know who they're going to get and they know their audience, they know everything. From my perspective, I don't know what you say, I think that is a big sign of that the industry has, it almost feels like we're just getting started. In the US and like other markets, I know they're much more advanced and podcast is much more common. You know, the infrastructure is there for all these kind of things. Brands are more receptive. But I feel like here, I'm reflecting over the last, 4 years since I started. Like when I started, I had heard of a couple of podcasts around. That's it. Even my parents were like, who the fuck's going to listen to you? I'm like, you know what? That's a fair point. That's fair. They're even like, what is a podcast? But now it's completely different. Now it went from being something that a couple of people did. Now everyone wants to get into it and do it. So what is your perspective on the future of the industry? Where do you see it going over the next like 5 years?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's what we need to have an industry in 5 years is to have brands spending more. Because we saw many great podcast networks going bankrupt because of revenue. They were producing great content. They had listeners, they had literally everything, but they had to close down because of revenue.
Really?
So, yes.
That's interesting, because I feel like if you had like multiple shows, that's multiple audiences.
You have to monetize it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's where you guys come in. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, we try our level best.
Yeah. I think you guys do a great job.
Yes, there will be a lot of education to do. We're doing it, and we see a massive increase the last couple of months.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it has really picked up. That's true. I agree with you.
The discussions with the agencies have been super supportive here in the region, because if you're a big brand, you have media agencies, and it's the role of the media agency to help you invest properly your media budget. And I have to say, the agencies in the region pushed a lot for podcasts. They saw the opportunity, they are podcast listeners, and now we see brands also requesting to the agencies, so we see a shift happening.
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Because sorry to interrupt you, Adel, but because my wife works in, she's a senior account manager at a big agency here, and she's the podcast lead for the agency. So it's interesting. We're doing the same thing, but we're targeting different people.
Is it paid media, or is it content?
It's
Is it a media agency?
It's a media. It's a comms and it's a 360 media agency. It's called APCO Worldwide. I don't know if you've heard of it. So, and was interesting. So one of my clients in Abu Dhabi, when I was giving them, when I was, you know, pitching to them and giving them the proposal and stuff, he, one of the guys that was, you know, part of their team, actually, after we closed the deal, he's like, check this, I'm giving this to you just so you know. And he showed me what marketing companies were charging to like launch a podcast. And I'm like, oh, this is like, compared to what I'm charging, like this is daylight robbery. And I think what's become challenging or more challenging is a lot of agencies are now trying to enter that space to have a podcasting arm because they see an opportunity there, whatever. But from my perspective, I'm like, yes, but, and you know probably even more than me since you've been in it for a while. Creating a podcast arm and making that successful is it's not an easy thing to do. And it's not something that, if you haven't been in the industry, you don't have that knowledge, I think you're going to struggle to produce the level of content that you'd want to. What do you think? What's your perspective?
I mean, it's different if you are...
Do you get you know what I'm coming from?
In terms of cost, producing a podcast?
Like in terms of their knowledge in the space to start creating that revenue stream for them.
For the agencies?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is relevant to offer it to certain advertisers. Not all the advertisers are relevant for podcast.
Yeah.
But we have a different relationship with the agencies. They have been very supportive with what we do. And if you deal with the big brands will rely on their media agencies. So you need an agencies to talk on your behalf and see if it's relevant and then discuss it with the advertisers. I think we're blessed to deal with very knowledgeable people. They see the opportunity, not for every account, but when they see the opportunity, they recommend it. But we shouldn't put all the advertisers at the same level. If you are small advertisers and you have the internal resources to dedicate someone on that, and you can produce it in-house and get some help from a producer. But when you are a massive corporation, you better rely on expert and get an agency also to plan also whole strategy in terms of, okay, we're going to produce content, but we also need listeners. So they're going to put also a strategy to promote your show. Mm-hmm. That's why you can end up with costs which are higher for big advertisers because they think reach. Anything they do, it's all about reach, and they need to reach a certain number of... But if your strategy is to produce content, it's to build your own catalog of content, and you don't need the 100,000s of views, this is a different thing, something you can't manage internally. Yeah. You also have to think that if you are a big corporation and a part of your team is on that for a couple of months because there is a learning curve, you're going to do things wrong.
Absolutely, yeah.
So at the end, it might cost you way more if you have a whole team that spend a couple of months on that and do a couple of mistakes, and then to give it to a professional, the price is more premium, but the results will be also more premium. So
and you can probably get it done for you in a much shorter time frame as well.
You will save time, and you won't have to reproduce the mistake you did in the beginning.
Exactly.
So this is what you buy.
There you go. You know, and that's where you know people like us would come in to do whatever different things for them. But I like what you said, and I think it's an important thing to remember that there's different levels of advertisers, there's different tiers. So the requirements or the impact or the reach or the budgets that everyone has is going to be completely different. So catering your strategy relative to where you are at that moment and where you're trying to go is super, super, super important.
I'll add maybe one thing. The spend sometimes, the way brands says it has also to be proportional to the revenue you're going to generate. If you're big brands and Q4 or Ramadan is a huge part of your revenue, you don't want to take the risk to do it wrong. So for you, even if the spend is in 100,000s, but you're going to generate millions of dollars during that period, it has to be...
Okay, let me ask you this question. Because... So the last guest I had on my podcast does exactly what I do, but he lives in, I think he's living in Singapore, but he was just passing through and we managed to, have a recording together. He told me how we position, because we're positioning ourselves in different ways, me and him. So my positioning is, you want to launch a podcast? I got you. No problem. I know that we'll do the process, we'll build out the strategy, the execution, the guest outreach, the content, the technical side, but all that's taken care of. But I see podcasting when I'm talking to an agency as it's a marketing tool, and I wouldn't say it's the like if I have, let's say, $50,000 and I'm like, and I want a significant ROI in terms of like dollars, I would say, okay, maybe investing in launching your own podcast for, if that's the, you know, goal that you want, might not be the right thing to do. But if you want like brand awareness, thought leadership, all that kind of stuff, and community, audience engagement, it's the most, in my opinion, it's the most powerful tool to use. But his approach is he's involved in the start, but his is about, okay, now you have a podcast, how do we grow it? How do we launch it? He was almost in like the second phase. So what's your perspective on podcasting? Is it just a marketing tool? Is it relevant for lead generation? I know you can have partnerships and sponsorships. I get the model. But when you're pitching to a brand, let's say they're considering launching a podcast, that's what I would say. What would you say? What's your perspective on all of that?
It depends. You have brands which are focused on what we call the performance. They want to generate leads or sales. Is not ideal, except if it's niche. If it's very niche, like for instance, if you are a cybersecurity solution and you generate $100 million per year, but your clients are literally maybe 200 people worldwide. That's the decision maker. If you produce a show and you can reach 200 people, you might generate a few $100 million with. It can also, how to say that? It can also give you more credibility in the industry compared to others.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And as I said in the beginning, you also, instead of organizing event and fly people, you can produce content that has the same purpose to reach the same audience. But then you have also brands like the FMCG brands, and they are more interested in awareness. So that's also a different thing. But then you need to produce content that gives them reach. But it's also an investment. If you produce the right content, it can last.
It's timeless, right?
We like fictional content. We produced in 2021, there was actually 2 seasons. We produced a fictional show for SUV brand, an American SUV brand. So we sat down with them and we understood, okay, they need a fictional show. We came up with the concept with the studio, with one of our partner, and we turned the car into one of the main characters of the story. So the car became
like the hero, or the
whole story happened in the car. So we recorded the sound of the engine, the windows. So we got the car for 1 weekend, and all that was incorporated in the story. They also mentioned the name, but very natively. So for you as listeners, it doesn't sound like an ad. We even removed the logo.
Exactly.
We didn't put the logo.
Exactly.
It wasn't because brands sometimes want the logo, but sometimes it's not productive. Remove it. You can incorporate that in the story, and people will know it's your car. And the cool thing with the fictional show for a car brand, you can listen to the show in 10 years. It's still a brand new car.
It's true.
So
you're right. Yeah.
So 2 seasons were produced. The client paid for 3 months. Every Ramadan, the show is ranking top 3.
Wow.
And the client is still getting the same listens they paid 2 years ago. And so there is content you can produce which can be relevant within the next few years, and the cost will go down with the time.
Yeah, so, for sure. But I think you made a very interesting point about in the sense of the timelessness of it, in the fact that they produced that 2 years ago and the show still ranks that, top 100, top whatever. But it wouldn't
top 3 in the fictional category.
There you go, top 3. So you wouldn't have that and that access if you hadn't produced, that content. And I know you guys you worked with Claire's as well, I believe, and they wanted to reach Gen Z, so they created a fictional show that talks about their brand ethos. And you touched on that. You touched on that point.
Sorry, we produced a few shows.
Yeah.
Branded shows and
Claire is the one.
don't remember that one.
So they're
we produce for Bell Group, we produce for GMC, we produce for DP World, we produce for a few.
Yeah, but they're like a jewelry brand. You know, Claire, that pink brand that advertises, like it's.
We work with 100.
Well, that's the thing, you know. It's fine. He's a busy man, guys. He doesn't know. Anyway, well, the point I was trying to make is building on what you said was people. I think, and this is a misconception some companies and brands have is, I have to, we have to do a podcast, fine, but in the podcast, we have to like promote our products or whatever. And I'm like, it's not about that. The podcast is almost building a new brand in a way. A new brand that has the same values, the same approach, the same mindset, the same audience as what you do. So I heard once there was a law firm had a podcast, and the podcast was all about like horror stories, like horror law stories and whatever. So people would if you listen to that, I'm like, oh, I like that podcast. Then you think, okay, who's the host? Oh, okay, who does he work for? Oh, he works for that company. What do these guys do with law? You know what? I need a lawyer. You get what I'm saying? So it's an indirect sell. You know, I don't have to say my name. I don't have to have the logo. Like you said, I just have to create the narrative that supports my brand and my audience.
So the content needs to have a purpose for the listeners.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not an ad. Because we have brands who technically want to just replicate what they do with a standard social media campaign. You need to come up with something relevant for your listeners. People need to listen. You won't listen to an ad for like an hour.
No,
if you know it's an ad. But if they produce content you're interested in and the brand is mentioning, that works.
That's true. Adil, I think I could sit and talk with you for 10 hours. But just to round off our conversation for today, for me personally, what I've learned today, and you know, this is why I do the show. Number one is to learn from people. Like I do my show, Khalid's interest is number one. That's what I do, and then the audience. If you like it, great. If not. But what I've learned today from you, Adil, is about you've given me a deeper understanding of podcasting and the ecosystem that is involved around podcasting. I had no idea about the third-party softwares that allow you to capture brand life. I had no idea that you could, about programmatic advertising and how that worked. And I think you guys have done an incredible job in positioning yourselves with what you do. It's niche, but you guys you were first, and not only first, you were the best. So
thank you.
I wanted to tell you congratulations on that. That's awesome what you guys have built, man. For my last two questions, these are questions I ask all my guests. So looking back, Adil, if I ask you personally, professionally, if I ask you, what are you most proud of for yourself? What would you say?
Regarding the accomplishment with the...
What are you most proud of?
That's a deep question.
We save the deep ones for the end.
It's it's building this actually. It's we work with hundreds of podcasters, and now some of them can literally live with that. Like we have podcasters who aren't generating anything, and now we're helping them generate enough revenue to keep working on their craft. And they don't need to be distracted with trying to figure out how to find revenue. And there is still a lot of work to do on our end to make it better. But I'm a podcast listener and I love podcasts. There is podcasters, if tomorrow they tell me that they're closed down, my purpose is... I don't know what I'm going to do.
I would be sad. I would genuinely be sad if the people that I listen to stop producing content.
Yes.
For sure.
I don't know what I'd be doing. So, and... we're quite proud to be able to help people, and what we are building will make things even easier, because this industry wouldn't exist without the content producers.
Exactly.
We need to find a way to help them generate enough revenue, but also have a fair model. They need to get most of the revenue.
Yeah.
So we're kind of proud of that. We're just trying to scale that and make it bigger.
Yeah.
Help podcasters generate way more revenue.
Well, guys, if you need help for all the podcasters out there, check out Next Broadcast Media, guys. Definitely something you should. Definitely something you want to look at. And I appreciate, I can imagine building this business through this process. There's probably been so much shit that you've gone through, ups and downs. But speaking to you now, it sounds like it sounds like you're proud of the growth that you've had, over these last couple of years, building this company and going through that experience. And for my last question, Adil, that I want to ask you, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
Produce your podcast. Your story matters. Yeah. Don't look at the numbers. It doesn't matter if you have 1 listener. You might change the life of 1 person. We have podcasters that produce content around mental health. They are saving people. And you don't need to save hundreds of people. You can literally change the life of 1 person. Personally, podcast made me build that. I had like a shift in 2018 when I started consuming a lot of audiobooks and podcasts, and a few podcasts made me see that life is completely different. For me, a big inspiration is Casey Neistat. I saw a lifestyle I didn't know could exist, and I loved it. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe I can change everything, and started consuming more podcasts. And those people had an impact on what I did, but also on my team as well. Nothing would have been possible without the team we have. We are blessed to have the best team ever. Lemia, Akash.
Shout out to the team. Shout out to the team. Round them up.
Team, Syed, my brother. So people invested a few years of their life. They did huge sacrifices in the team to get that working, and now slowly things start to work.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. I think me and you are very very similar in like how in our mindsets and the content that we consume, and what you said, if you could just change the life of 1 person, that would be enough. And that's why the show is called Hope It Helps, because that's all we're trying to do here, man, and that's all why I bring guests on. And I hope that people listening to this episode, if you've considered starting a podcast, if you're a business that doesn't understand what podcasting is, that wants to get into it, this is the episode for you. All the answers are here. I wanted to say, Adil, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show.
Thanks,
it's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned so much from you, and I know anyone who's interested in podcasting or the advertising of podcasting and the monetization can learn a lot from this episode. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
If people want to connect with you, reach out with you, work with you guys, where can we find you?
Nextbroadcast.media. It's or admanager.fm. But you'll find us very easily on nextbroadcast.media. And
they're the first link on Google, guys. I checked.
Okay, good.
Adil, thank you so much, my man.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for the great work. It's you're serving a great purpose.
I really appreciate it, man. Thank you for the kind words. Guys, to everyone listening, thank you so much for your time. As always, please like, share, follow, and subscribe to the podcast at Hope It Helps Pod on Instagram. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.
Thank you.